All right, scavengers, welcome to the Sixth Scale Scavengers, the podcast, episode 20. My name's Brian Fontaine. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Chris Letty, aka Vintage Viewport. Chris, we made it to episode 20, more than double digits. It's kind of crazy now. We've been talking about it recently with all the different content and stuff that we've got from the Scavengers Assemble Hangout and now Rogue One Sixth. And on top of that, in nerddom right now, if that's a term that I'm going to use, you're just getting back from Star Wars Celebration. Literally, you and I were just watching on Twitter the live stream of the Avengers red carpet world premiere. It's just a great time to be a fan of all this stuff.
There's so much going on. It's awesome. I can't get enough of it. I love it. This is definitely not our end game. We've got
we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
We got so much going on. I love it. It's just a great time to be a fan of all these different franchises, and there's just so much content coming our way. And it just gives us a lot to talk about.
So you're right. This is not our end game whatsoever with all the different stuff that we've got now. We're stressing the limits of our podcast hosting site on Libsyn. We may have to this month kick it up a notch again, but the thing is all this content you talked about, Chris, with what we've got here on our, I guess you can call it now a network. We've got multiple shows. And we just love creating the content. We all love talking about Hot Toys collecting, especially Marvel and Star Wars. And just the community. I mean, that's one of the cool things, is not only to talk about the new figures and the releases that are out, but being able to talk about it with others. And we haven't used this phrase in quite a while, Chris, but I'm going to coin it again just because I'm feeling nostalgic about it being episode 20 here. But, we're not experts. We're learning. I mean, you and I, when we started this whole thing, you and I were just learning constantly. We just wanted to share that with others. And that kind of fostered a community that now is just bursting at the seams. And who knows where it's going to go from now.
Possibilities are endless. Now, there's so many ways things could go in the positive direction. I love everything we're doing. It just feels great that we have the support and following that just wants to, help this whole thing keep rolling. But yeah, man, it's been great so far, being on the different shows and helping contribute to those and just having fun talking about all this stuff we love.
Speaking of talking about stuff we love, I mean, we just mentioned it. The world premiere is going on for Endgame as we record. This will probably hit the RSS feed on Tuesday, so we're recording on a Monday night. We've got Endgame releasing worldwide this week. Some countries are getting it on Wednesday. Some, like here in the United States, will be able to watch it Thursday evening. And true to form, I mean, we are a collecting podcast through and through. We love talking about the pop culture side. I know Steve does a much better job with that, with the Assemble every other week. But we're no spoiler zone, so we're not going to, even if we knew anything, we wouldn't talk about it tonight. Like, as the Russos have said, Thanos demands your silence, and you won't find any spoilers here. So please continue to feel like you can listen to the rest of the episode, and we're not going to give anything away because, well, we don't know anything anyways.
No, we don't know anything, but man, we really want to know those answers, and we will soon. Hopefully many of our listeners get to see it, in the next week or so. We'll probably put up a no spoiler warning on the group for a couple weeks, and that way we give everybody enough time to see the movie at their own time, and we don't want to ruin anything for anybody. So I don't know, man. What's your plans? When are you going to see the movie?
So I'm definitely seeing it Thursday, and it all just depends on what theater. Now, I'm kind of bummed because I thought we'd created this little tradition with you and I know we've got our listener, Raul, who's not far from where you live on the seacoast in New Hampshire. We went and saw Captain Marvel, and just as we're all really busy adults with families, it just didn't work this time. I'm actually going away for a couple days. My son's got school vacation this week, and so I'm hoping to get to see it in a little rinky-dink theater up on the White Mountains, and then I'm hoping as soon as I get home this weekend, I'll be able to go see it in IMAX. How about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm going to continue that tradition to go see the movie with Raul. I apologize, not that we can't have you on board, but we'll try to
Boo.
we'll try to get another viewing in at some point. I'm sure it's going to be a multiple viewing movie in theaters, but yeah, Raul and I are going to go see it Thursday night over at O'Neill Cinemas in Epping, New Hampshire, and unfortunately, both of us, it was like a last minute decision. He was supposed to be out of town for work, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. Our seats aren't the best, but at least we'll get in Thursday night. Just, man, get ready to sit through that whole movie with no breaks.
Yeah, go to the bathroom early. Don't stop drinking early afternoon, just so you don't have any temptation whatsoever about that. And it's going to be crazy. And I know we've kind of already kind of waxed poetic about the MCU for the couple of months leading up to this. Most of our listeners know you're strictly a Marvel Hot Toys collector. You love Star Wars. I've been collecting both. I love both Marvel and Star Wars, but we definitely have slanted more Marvel lately. I think that's why Matt and Roy just got sick of us doing that and decided to make their own Star Wars themed show. But I mean, I think it's hit me even more in the last week or two, just about how impressive this feat is to have 22 movies in 11 years, and it's all within the same continuity. And as you and I just watched live streaming on Twitter right before we hit record tonight, the Russos were up there, and what they've been able to do with Marcus McFeely, starting back to, I mean, those guys wrote the script for First Avenger, but the Russos weren't involved. And then we got Winter Soldier, which is just an amazing film. And they went on to do Civil War and then Infinity War and now Endgame. And the stakes just kept going up and up and up. And I really have no words. And I mean, we are first and foremost a collecting podcast. We talk about them all the time. I mean, Marvel Studios News, they just do a fantastic job. And if you are a Marvel fan like you and I are, Chris, then definitely I want to tell our listeners to go check them out. I mean, they're not paying us to say that. We're both big fans of their work. I know, Chris, you had the opportunity to meet Paul out in Star Wars Celebration, which had to be pretty darn cool.
It really was. And for me, being kind of a podcast nerd, I totally geeked out. I'm sitting there at breakfast at the hotel, and I'm like, I told my buddy Justin, I'm like, hey, I know that guy over there. He's like, oh, really? Who is he? I'm like, he's a host of one of my favorite podcasts. He's like, he just rolls his eyes. He's like, oh man, you're such a podcast nerd. So as we were walking out, I just had to say hi to him, and he was very grateful. We snapped a little pic, and I gave him some Sixth Scale Scavengers and Vintage Viewport swag. And Paul, he's just a great guy. He's down to earth, and he just loves Marvel and Star Wars and all those things. And it was just awesome. And I just listened to their latest episode today about Thanos and what his Endgame is. And it got me all amped up. And it is crazy to think about what Marvel Studios has done with this whole series of movies that have they've built up to this point. And I think that's why it just gives another element to this collecting. It's all these characters, and you build up this relationship with all these characters, and it just makes it more meaningful. And you just really, really got to know all these characters. And it's sad to see this end, but it's also really exciting. But
yeah, and I mean, this isn't an original thought by my stance, but a lot of people have said like this is the Star Wars of our time. And I mean, you and I are huge Star Wars fans, but we weren't around long enough to see a lot of the original films when they came out in theaters. And that was our childhood. I mean, Star Wars was our childhood, but now even my son is 7.5 or so, and I haven't really let him watch a lot of the movies. He's very aware of them. And I would say that he very well could easily be more. I mean, he's just infatuated with Transformers. That's a whole nother story for another day. But he gravitates more towards the Avengers stuff than he does Star Wars. And, you know, who knows? I'm struggling for the words because I'm really trying to figure out kind of like what it means to me, because I think back to when in 2008 we were going to get Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. And for me, like growing up, it was X-Men and the animated series on Fox. And that was kind of my gateway drug into comics. And I just always loved the X-Men. But I do remember at one point they had an Iron Man animated series on. And to this day, I haven't watched it in forever. I couldn't tell you exactly what happened, but I knew that my brother and I used to watch it like all the time. And we had some of it may have been Toy Biz, but they had action figures of those. And I just remember when he and I found out that there was going to be a live action Iron Man film, and we just geeked out. And who knew 11 years later that it would spawn this entire continuity and all these characters would be intertwined, and we got introduced them at various different points. And, you know, there's not all perfect continuity, but I don't care. It's just like this overarching story that there's a beginning and there's going to be an end. It's sad to say, like, you just want these characters to be around forever, but I think there's something to be said to have this character arc for most of these. And I hope most of them still go on. But if they don't, just like a lot of people can go back and appreciate the original trilogy for Star Wars or the prequels or whatever it is, like you're never gonna lose what you had with those movies. Like, I'm a huge Captain America fan, and if this is it, I have no problem going back and watching First Avenger, Avengers, Winter Soldier, and just doing this Captain America arc, because there's so many films. Like, even think back at like the heroes that we grew up that we love, like Luke Skywalker. You still only had a few films with him. I mean, Captain America, he's in so many. It's just the appreciation I have for it is just crazy. And I think it's definitely why I've gravitated more towards collecting the Marvel stuff than the Star Wars lately. And I just love having the representation of them on my shelf that looks movie accurate, and it's a high quality collectible. It adds that extra layer to collecting that would still probably be there, because I've seen all the movies as we've come along, and I realize I'm rambling here, Chris, and I need you to save me.
Here I come in to save you. No, I don't. Dude, I feel the same way. It's these movies have really cemented these characters all over the world as these icons and elevated these characters beyond what their popularity was in the comics. And that into itself is crazy to me. Growing up a comic book fan, my brother was really into comics, and I just always knew. I collected the trading cards in the early 90s. Like, I just knew all the stats for these people, these characters. But the way the MCU has really elevated a lot of these characters and created their own stories using bits and pieces from the comics and new stories and manipulating it so that everything feels like it's natural and it works. And that, to me, I think, I mean, that's just, it is mind-boggling that Feige and all these writers and creators have been able to do this. And I think that's that commitment to this continuity, this storyline, just putting out the best story possible, is what makes this so successful, or has made this so successful all over the world. It's not just in the US, it's just not just in Asia or wherever. I mean, it's like literally all over the world. And we've never seen anything like this before. And it's this grand experiment that I hope goes on for at least another 10 years.
Yeah, we got some good stuff. We have I thought we were going to have a lot more news to talk about, Chris, just the way that a lot of these Endgame figures were coming out. But I think I just have this hunch that a lot of them are very spoilery, that Hot Toys and Marvel and Disney have decided to kind of wait. I feel like we'd have more than 4 or 5 figures now from Endgame out. And we could still, inevitably, it happened last time. We recorded episode 19 with Matt after we'd gotten talked to Roy and Steve, and it was great to have the rest of the team on to kind of introduce our base listeners to the new team members and the great work that they're all capable of, and very exciting. But we got a couple figures dropped literally the day after we dropped the podcast, and we'll talk about those. We've talked about them on the Assemble, but you and I haven't really had the opportunity to dig in too far into each of those. We are going to talk about kind of the end game, and it's not really the end game for Hot Toys Marvel collectors. It's what's next, and that's kind of our topic for this episode. And the feature figure review that we're going to have. We don't have anything really brand new because apparently Sideshow doesn't want to send us Black Panther or Thanos or any of those other things right now. But we're going to go back a couple of months and talk about the Iron Man Mark 46 concept art figure under the Marvel Studios The First 10 Years line. MMS 489 D25 will be the feature figure review. We'll go over that briefly. It's something that's still available on the Sideshow site. It is a fantastic figure, and I hope that Iron Man fans don't miss out on that one. And yeah, so Chris, let's just get into it. Let's get into news. And I know that you're coming back from Star Wars Celebration, but we know that you're going to be up and talking with both Matt and Roy on the next episode of Rogue One Sixth. And I just hate to steal any of that thunder for that. So we'll tell all of our listeners you had a good time, but wait a little bit longer to hear about it.
Oh yeah. I'll be on. Hopefully I can coordinate with those guys. It's kind of crazy. Our time differences are out there. So hopefully this week, look for that coming soon. And, I just say one thing, like I was looking for, it's Star Wars Celebration, so I'm looking for Star Wars stuff, but there was actually a good deal of Marvel products that vendors had, and I saw a handful of Marvel Hot Toys and some good deals, some figures that that have gone up in value. Some of the Iron Man diecast figures. There was Hela. There was just a bunch of older figures that you don't see very often. So it was nice to see that vendors had those available for people. But look for the next. Well, I think they already recorded the next episode, but a special episode of Rogue One 6, I'll be talking about my Star Wars Celebration experience. So, yeah, stay tuned.
All right, good stuff. So, Chris, we've already talked about Thanos. We've already talked about the Mark 85. Briefly talked about Nebula last time out, but we've got 3 more figures to talk about. We've got 2 versions of Hawkeye and then a new War Machine. So, Chris, let's start with the Hawkeye. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a version that we got a standard and a deluxe version of, which we're both pretty excited about. Now, the standard version is MMS 531, going to retail for $243 on Sideshow. And then the deluxe, which you might as well just call it what it is, it's Ronin with the extra accessories for that. That's MMS 532. Going to retail for $274. And the release date on those Hawkeye figures is going to be next April 2020 to June 2020.
Oh man, it's too far away, but typical stuff. Hopefully, like a lot of these figures did with Infinity War, a lot of them got moved up and that sort of thing. So we'll kind of see how things play out as far as release dates go. But these figures look pretty awesome. I'm digging the style. Allison, every time she mentioned something, it was always about Ronin. When's Ronin coming out?
Yeah,
so
she was gonna do a TED talk for
right
the Ronin moniker that's been in the comics. But
yeah, no, I think given the option, it's pretty cool. I wonder how many people are actually going to order the regular version.
It's funny you mentioned that because I considered it, and we'll talk about our collection update in a little bit, but because the way I display my collection, I actually gave it some strong consideration, but because the price wasn't that much of a difference, I figured just at least having the option to have the extra head sculpt. And we did talk about it with Steve on the emergency Scavengers Assemble, is that there is the whole separate head sculpt. When I first saw this figure, Chris, and it dropped, I just imagined it was just a mask and a hood that you'd have to use. And we've talked about it. It's something to be careful of as Hot Toys collectors is anytime you have direct contact with a material or a plastic or something, and it's right up against like a neck area or a head sculpt or face area, there is the possibility that you could get some transfer of either the paint or the chemicals or whatnot. And I'm just so ultra careful about stuff like that. So when I heard that it was an extra head sculpt, that was actually the thing that sealed the deal for me.
No, that's a great point. You got to really be careful with these figures, especially if you have them in storage, to make sure that those fabrics, those dyed fabrics, aren't contacting, the skin tone areas. You don't want to cause any permanent damage. I think some people have found some tricks to help lessen the effect there. But yeah, no, it's a good point, and that's the big thing with this deluxe figure is having that extra head sculpt and a couple. He's got his swords. I think he's got like I don't know what that other thing is. It's like his backpack or something, or his.
This thing came loaded with accessories. I think having like the katana and the extra kind of sash for like the hood, but then he's also got his quiver of arrows and all the different hands that you get. I mean, if you're gonna display, I mean, if you just want, I don't think anyone's gonna bat an eyelash about the standard one, because I mean, the head sculpt of Jeremy Renner is just, it's spot on. I mean, Dude, it looks just like Clint Barton. It's probably one of the better. And I feel like we're fanboys here, Chris, but it's just like it keeps getting better. It's like, and I'm kind of glad and that I haven't been able to pull the trigger on a Hawkeye to date. And it's not, I mean, he's one of the original six, and some of the prior, I'll just be honest, some of the prior releases just haven't ever really done it for me. I mean, I know that the original one is still desirable out there. I know Mila within the last few weeks picked up that. I know that there's the Age of Ultron one, and that's not quite as strong. I think that might be one that you were able to get a good deal on last year. The Civil War one's obviously better, but the price for that is, it's still I would say anywhere from like 300 to 350. So it's still hard to attain that. This to me seems like it's, and we've said it on multiple shows that we have here, where I feel like we keep getting the definitive version of these figures, and it just it terrifies me to find out what like that's gonna mean. Because if this is us saying goodbye to some of these characters, they're giving us kind of one of the best versions of them, and I think this, if you're gonna have one Hawkeye in your collection, one Ronin, this could be the one.
This could definitely be the one, man. Getting pretty deep there.
It's a deep cut.
Seriously. No, I just love the aesthetic of this figure. He's got everything going on. He's got that. Growing up, I was a huge fan of ninjas, anything ninja style. I had to have
Ninja
it.
Gaiden.
Yes.
Or exactly. Gaiden, however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, so I just love that. I mean, in all honesty, I didn't really know. I knew that he took on the guise of Ronin in the comics, but I never read those comics. I didn't really know much about that storyline or anything. So to me, this is kind of new territory. And I just, you'll see where I went in our collection update. It's pretty much a given.
Why don't we just give that away right now?
I know, right?
So yeah, I think there's a place for people that go for the standard version. And I'll talk about it now. I really hope that I was going to be able to wait on adding this pre-order until after seeing the film, just because I wanted to see, and I've talked about it on one of the assembles, is depending on how long we see him as Ronin. I mean, if it's for a minute out of a 3-hour film, maybe that extra $30 was maybe not that well spent. But I mean, if it is really cool, and if the Russos do an awesome job, and it's just very iconic, then I think Ronin would be glad about doing that. But I had an expiring coupon and I needed to use it on something. And I knew that I was going to eventually probably get this just because I don't have a Hawkeye. I'd love to have him as representation of it. And I'm certainly not going to go back and pay any of the prior costs for any of the prior releases I just talked about there. So I just bit the bullet and went for it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, I think I might use that head sculpt for my Age of Ultron one to update that style a little bit.
Oh, that's a fantastic idea. Because then you could have, an upgraded figure plus still being able to display it with the hood. So
right, a different style instead of having the regular version and the Ronin version. But yeah, we'll see. So we also had the War Machine. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm struggling with this too because I also don't have a War Machine in my collection. And this one, I decided to wait. And we're going to get to our collection update in a little bit here. Feel like we should do the collection update first, then talk about news sometimes. But
I know, right?
So this one, it just looks a little weird. But as I think we talked about it, like there could be a purpose. There could also be multiple armors that we see for him in this film. When I look at this armor under certain angles, it kind of looks weird. And this is the third time I've told this joke, and it's horrible at this point, but it looks like War Machine on a keto diet. And he just looks really slim. And there could be a reason for that because it's not the traditional big bulky one. Like I just watched Iron Man 2 again the other night just because I'm just trying to cram in as many of the originals that I can right before. And I mean, that first Mark 1 that we got, I mean, he's insanely big and bulky. He's got the big, Gatling gun on his shoulder. And to see him a little bit more, just to have the shoulder cannon here and, just the hand repulsor things, it seemed a little very un-War Machine-like, but who knows? I mean, it doesn't look like it's a nanotech suit. In terms of like having some of the gadgets like Iron Man had in Infinity War, but we'll see. I would love to probably get a War Machine, but I just want to make sure that if it's not this one, that if there's another one and that's the one that might end up looking cooler.
Again,
the price is, sorry to cut you off. The price is good. I mean, $369, and this one has got a long runway. This is October 2020. Dang. And I mean, that's a ways out. Like, and I almost, even considering adding this to my budget, I'm kind of going through the mental exercise to say, okay, well, if I add it, what does this do? And I'm like, I didn't even have my budget extended out that far. I usually only keep it like a rolling 12 months. And I'm like, wow, I think I maybe need to go to the end of next year with what I set aside each month to say like, well, I could do it, but just because I can do it doesn't mean that I should do it. And I mean, and it's not that far out there in terms of what we usually get for regular releases. I mean, a year and a half out. Most of them are about a year. So we'll see. And it doesn't look overly complex. We've got the Don Cheadle half head sculpt. Just War Machine's helmet usually doesn't come all the way off like Iron Man's does, or as I've talked before, it doesn't, revert back into his neck area in the armor. So when War Machine lifts up his faceplate, all you see is his face. So they've never really had to do a full Don Cheadle Rhodey head sculpt. And I know a lot of collectors are looking for that.
That's actually a really good point. I never really thought about that. Probably they want to stay true to what happens in the movies instead of kind of just doing a full-on helmetless head sculpt. But no, it would be nice to get a full Don Cheadle head sculpt. But again, your point with the price, I think the price is the most enticing thing with this figure because you're not, compared to the Mark IV price, I mean, you're talking, there's like a $45 difference or something like that. But you're getting a lot less with this figure. He is a bit more toned. I guess we'll see why that is in Endgame. But I too, contemplating it. I kind of wish I had picked up earlier versions of War Machine because I just love the look of the armor. And I too think that I don't think it's nanotech. It just doesn't look that style. I don't know.
But this also is the Mark 6, and you mentioned it. So I'm not as big as an expert on the War Machine armors as I am with the Iron Man ones, but we basically had Mark 3 was in Civil War. You mentioned the Mark 4 from Infinity War, and that's like the big, massive one that, I mean, he's decked out in that one. And I think the price difference on that is justifiable. But I mean, there's potentially a Mark 5. There has to be a Mark 5. And that's what makes me wonder, is there a different armor that we're going to see? And it's hard to tell from promotional images, and this isn't really spoilerly, and we've talked about it on other shows, there's a Lego set of it. Is the Mark 5 a War Machine buster? I don't know. Yeah. If it is, I probably have zero interest in getting it. I'll be a fan of it and I'll appreciate it from afar. But that also makes me more likely to get, this Mark 6 version.
Mm-hmm. That can be the representation.
Maybe the Mark 6 goes in the Mark 5. Who knows?
Oh, man. Now you're talking crazy.
Great. Well, that's what we do. We speculate and pretend like we know what we're talking about.
Exactly. So yeah, this one, we'll see. This is going to be a wait and see figure for me.
Yeah. So this is MMS 530. As mentioned, the price of $369 coming out next October. This will be diecast 31. So the Mark 85 Iron Man suit's going to be diecast 30. The Neon Tech 2.0 one that we talked about is going to be 29. The War Machine Punisher armor is going to be 28. And I'm just going back down through our checklist. And then 27 is, I'm working backwards. The 27 diecast is going to be the Mark 7 from Avengers. 26 is that Mark 4 War Machine that you talked about. And then we get back to diecast 25, which would be our feature figure review, which is the Mark 46 concept art. So that's what we kind of have looked forward to as diecast Hot Toys collectors coming up.
Lots of good diecast coming our way. So, make sure, as we've seen, as time has gone by, some of these figures, once they get sold out on Sideshow, expect that price to go up. Yeah. So what's next? We're doing.
Let's talk collection update because we kind of just basically talked about. Yeah. So I'll let you lead this off. I've got one more to add than you did, but
sure.
We talked about it. We're less than 2 weeks from the last time we recorded, and I didn't think you and I were going to have anything. I know if they were going to have some Endgame figures, let's be honest here. I mean, we were going to probably pre-order them, but so what do you got on deck?
Okay. Like I previously gave away that deluxe Hawkeye Ronin. It wasn't a day one pre-order. I think it dropped while I was out at Celebration. Like you said, I had some coupons that were expiring, so I decided to use one on that. And then I also I had one other coupon, and I kind of looked at the figures that were available that I didn't have lined up yet. And I really looked at the pictures, the promo pictures for the Iron Man Mark 85 MMS 528 D30. So I started falling in love with the look of that figure. So I locked that one in. Pretty excited about those, but it was between that and the War Machine. But like I said, I got the Mark 4 on pre-order, so I think that Mark 6 is going to be one that I sit on for a little bit. But yeah,
you got plenty of time to sit on it.
Tons of time.
I think even starting the max 6 month payment plan at Sideshow, you wouldn't even have to start it until next May or June.
It's crazy. It's just insane. But what'd you pick up?
All right, so I did want to. I figure this would probably be as good a time as any to talk about it, but it does seem that for some reason, and I don't feel like getting into it because we don't really know what's going on with some of the distribution issues that Sideshow's got going on. But I feel like they also have thrown collectors a little bit of a bone lately with, hey, if you pre-order a Marvel figure, we're going to give you not a reward points, but we're going to give you they've been throwing promo codes at people just for ordering, like, and it shows up in your email like the following day, thank you for your order, and you said here's $25 to use for a future one, and you're always like, okay, well, I'm going to pick from one of the 7 first order stormtroopers that are out there. But you load the promo code into your account and you see you can use it on anything, even pre-orders coming up. So that has been advantageous for collectors lately. If you're kind of dialed in and you're trying to get in with some of these Endgame figures, it's actually been financially pretty good to do that, because I mean, I personally view these $20 and $25 coupons as, yes, it reduces your payment that you need to pay, or it'll reduce each of your monthly installments that you need to do. Let's call it what it is. It's essentially free shipping. And that, because even in my budget, what I'm forecasting is I always overestimate shipping. I'll usually, to ship from California to New Hampshire, it's never more than $25, but that's always what I forecast, so I don't shortchange myself, to know like it is a cost I'm going to incur at the time that it does ship. But I mean, that's basically what it does for you, is you get the free shipping on it. And there's no real reason for me, until I'm convinced otherwise, to shop anywhere other than Sideshow, just because of all the reasons that we've talked about in the past. But that has kind of led to me getting a few other figures that I probably would have waited a little bit on. So using one of those, I did, as pretty much everyone's been able to figure out, I did go for the deluxe Hawkeye as well. Was not a day one pre-order. And because I ordered that the following day, I got that other coupon, and I had another one expiring as well, because I think I had actually gotten a code from John Martino over at Tashi Station. They had I think it was like a $20 code, and it was more of a generic one. It wasn't tied to anyone's account individually. So I was able to use that, and I picked up the Nebula figure as well. That was not a day one pre-order. And it's kind of funny because as I've been thinking about it more, I don't like, and it's not like I don't like the Guardians characters, but I like some of them more than others. And it's funny, the ones that I do like, it's Rocket and it's Nebula. So, but there's just something about, I don't know why, I like the character of Nebula. So, that's what I ordered. And it was more justifiable to know, like, it's probably the only one we're going to get. Mm-hmm. And everything just looks fantastic about it. So, and, we're in advance of the film here. She could play a pretty big role in Endgame.
Absolutely. Her connection to Thanos obviously is pretty tight there. So I think Nebula will play a big part in this movie. And, we're going to potentially see her interact with more of the characters. And so I really like Nebula too. Again, like I said last episode, she was my number one figure that I was looking for. And I was really excited that she dropped a few weeks back. Yeah, man, it's funny you say that coupon. I literally just checked my email and I had another one sitting in there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so I got a couple weeks to use another one. So
you just got a new coupon, like, right now? Or you had it?
It was, I got the email yesterday. So
when's the last time you ordered a figure?
Let's see, what's today? Saturday. So
So I think I got Nebula on Friday. I think I had ordered Hawkeye on Thursday, and I think Nebula on Friday. So maybe I'll luck out. I just checked, and I don't have anything yet. But if I do, I do. If not, I still have a few more to go, and I know that there's going to be a couple more day one pre-orders coming my way. With as soon as they drop, I'm Captain America. That's going to be it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I was just going to say, you can pretty much bet that we're going to get more figures coming in the next 2 weeks. So, but we'll talk about what we might see coming up here.
Yeah. And I did actually add one figure, and it was an older figure. And I kind of had decided I was done getting older figures, but as I've been kind of I'm not going to have multiples of all the characters, but I would like to have at least one version of a lot of the main Avengers team. And Scarlet Witch has just been one that has eluded me for quite a while, whether it's getting sniped at the last second on eBay or just really striking out. But I had set up a save search on eBay, and I lucked into finding one that was listed as brand new, and the minimum bid was high, but it was relatively cheaper than a lot of the used ones were going for. And I had it watched, and it was coming up. It was going to end on a Sunday evening, and nobody had bid the first bid yet. It got to be like an hour or two before, and I'm like, all right, this might be my chance. I'll put in the minimum bid. If somebody outbids me, I'll just let it go, because I'm not going to get into a bidding war. But it was a new figure. Lo and behold, I put the bid in, nobody else bid on it, and I got it. And the shipping was actually ridiculously, probably half of what it ended up needing to be. So I've got the Civil War Scarlet Witch finally, and it's a really good figure, Chris. If we did more retro reviews, I'd probably consider putting it under the microscope. But for a figure that's got rooted hair, I'm actually really glad that I was able to add it, because as we've talked about it, we're not getting that Infinity War version.
Nope, we're not. We're not getting her, unfortunately. And who knows what is to come with that character going forward. But I have that figure as well, and she's just an awesome figure.
Yeah, I mean the rooted hair I thought was going to be like big and puffy, and it could probably use a little work with maybe some hair wax or something, but overall not that bad. Obviously the face sculpt is just spot on. The tailoring on all the clothes is great. I was actually really pleasantly surprised to see that the boots were two parts. That I just figured a lot of the Black Widow figures, the boot is actually, you can't usually pivot the ankle, but it does. There is a spot just above her ankle where you can kind of maneuver it, so it definitely helps. But I'm definitely glad I was able to add that one finally.
Oh, that's awesome, man! I'm glad you found her. Where? How do you ever set up? Who do you ever hanging out with?
Right now, she's kind of hanging out with the Civil War gang. Although I was just thinking, I'm like, oh, it's mostly Team Cap, but Black Panther and Doctor Strange Volume 1 are hanging out there too. But I have to do some massive reorganization and posing of a lot of stuff coming up here. It's I've just been so busy with work and everything. It's all that stuff's really kind of taken a back seat.
I hear you. Well, we're overdue for a little collection tour. So once you get that all set up, make sure to share it with our fellow collectors.
Absolutely. All right, so that is our collection update, and I have a feeling by the next time we record and we'll have Endgame out, I think we'll have a bunch more figures released, because I really feel like the Endgame line is going to rival the Civil War and Infinity War lines that they've done on the Marvel side. I have a feeling we're going to get more than 20 figures.
That seems to be a pretty common number that people are predicting, roughly, in that 18 to 22 range, which is nuts. Like, I mean, the amount of figures that could potentially come out, and we've talked about it on the Assemble and stuff. Some of the potential figures that might be coming out. I mean,
we've got 5 right now.
Yeah.
We're going to get a Captain America. There's 6. We're going to get a Black Widow. There's 7. We're going to get a Hulk. That's 8. We're going to get, what else are we going to get?
Rocket.
We're going to get a Rocket. There's 9. We're going to get and probably another Ant-Man. That's 10. We're going to get a Captain Marvel. That's 11. Who knows? And then even a lot of these characters, we could get multiple versions, and we don't even know what's going to happen with the storyline. And I mean, I think when it's all said and done, I mean, we're really going to be looking at 15 to 20 figures. And I think some of these, as speculated, we're going to get multiple versions. I mean, we could get multiple Caps. We could get multiple Iron Mans. We just talked. We might get multiple War Machines. Some of these other figures, it looks, and this is just me speculating, it looks like in some of the movie, it looks like it's almost immediately after Infinity War. So we're probably not going to get another Black Widow with blonde hair, but we do see her later on with a different style. That tells me we're going to get another Black Widow. Black Widow is one of the most popular figures worldwide. And I mean, Chris, that kind of dovetails into our topic, and we'll just kind of briefly cover this. It's like, well, what is next for MCU collectors? Because right now, I think pre being able to watch Endgame, we don't really know, and it sounds like a horrible topic to talk about, but if this is the end for a lot of the original six Avengers that we have come to know and love, and if they is going to be a baton tossing to the next wave of Captain Marvel, Black Panther, more Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Shuri, who knows? I mean, a lot of these people that we consider the core members of the Avengers, in the comics, they weren't the core members, and they have you mentioned it a little bit ago pretty eloquently. Like, they elevated some of these characters from like C and B level comic book heroes to A-listers. I mean, Iron Man was not an A-lister beforehand. He is now. Captain America is by far one of the most popular superheroes because of the MCU. A lot of people just, and I think he suffers a lot from why Superman suffers a lot in the comics, because he's too goody two shoes and there's not a lot of faults. But the MCU gave him faults, and he made him interesting, and it made him question, authority and whatnot. And I think we're going to get to the point where I don't even know what the shift is going to be. We've now heard that Kevin Feige has said Spider-Man Far From Home is going to be the conclusion of Phase 3, or as they've now dubbed it, kind of the Infinity Saga. But we don't even know what films are coming next. I have a feeling at Hall H this year at San Diego Comic-Con, I think they're going to let us know what's coming up. And there's been some speculation about what some of those films are going to be: a Black Widow solo film, a sequel to Black Panther, a sequel to Doctor Strange, the Eternals. The Eternals is the wild card here. They now have the ability to do the Fox characters, which I don't think they're going to do, anytime soon. And it'll have to be the right time and the right story. I don't see a big team up movie on the horizon, Chris, and I don't know what that does. I mean, I'm not saying that we need an Avengers film to tie everything together, but it's been the bigger films that have really gave us a lot of the characters. And I'm not saying that I'm skeptical that Marvel is going to slow down anytime soon, but it may be a good time to really dig into what they're going to give us now, because we don't know what's coming down the pipeline here. And it may be a situation where, I alluded to it a little bit ago, I'm not saying like people are going to be curmudgeons about it and like be like, Marvel Phase 1 through 3 is my Marvel Cinematic Universe, and what comes after that doesn't matter. Or when people get defensive about the prequels and the sequels, and it's inevitably going to happen, but it hasn't happened all that much. I mean, I think there's always going to be the Marvel versus DC, all that stuff, but I don't think that there's too many Marvel fans out there that have really any issues. They might nitpick stuff, but for the most part, like, I think the whole 22 movie arc has been pretty well received.
It definitely has, and you can look at the box office for all those movies because they have all done pretty well. I mean, you look at Captain Marvel, going over $1 billion worldwide, and the success of that movie leading right into Endgame, with the pre-sales being through the roof. I mean, we're going to see some just insane numbers for Endgame. And a lot of that success with the MCU, dictates what Hot Toys and Marvel decide to do as far as figure releases. And I don't know, man, there's just a lot of figures that could come down the pipeline. I don't know if there's going to be any slowing down. I think Endgame is really going to just continue that trend upwards for Hot Toys. We look at, you know, moving past this movie and talking about Far From Home coming this summer. You've got probably at least a couple different versions of Spider-Man. Fingers crossed we get a Mysterio. There could be another Nick Fury, an update to Maria Hill. There could be, who knows. And then going forward, you mentioned the Black Widow movie. Guaranteed to get at least one figure from that. The sequels to Doctor Strange, Black Panther. You know, Black Panther could open up the opportunity for an Okoye figure, an M'Baku. Who knows there? And then also Eternals. I mean, they just signed on, or I don't think it's been officially announced, but Angelina Jolie supposedly is going to be headlining that movie. And she's already gotten a Hot Toys figure with Maleficent. So I don't know. Shang-Chi's come in. Hopefully they get a figure from that. There's a lot of figures in the pipeline. I don't think there's going to be any slowing down.
I mean, we're not going away anytime soon. As we talked about in the opening, Chris, this is not our end game. But does any of that change your collecting strategy at all?
It really does, man. It's that collector mentality. You know, I go back to my roots with vintage collecting, with Star Wars, the back of that card back saying collect them all, collect all, you know, 65, collect all 77, collect all 92. It's just like, it's that issue where you can't collect them all because, you know, they cost some money, a lot more money than, you know, a lot of us are willing to admit. But yeah, it's going to, I think, it's funny because I don't have my stuff displayed and you give me some grief. You're like, you know, once you get that stuff displayed, you're probably gonna sell off some figures because you're gonna say, you know, I've got a lot of extra figures here, and I feel like that's gonna happen. It's the likely scenario where, you know, before I even get this stuff displayed, there's already another version that's like, oh man, you know, I might as well get the newest, the best one and sell off the other ones. And man, I wish I could do it all, but you know, I need to win the lottery. That's basically it.
Well, it was funny. So I was talking to our buddy Mark Pearson earlier today, and he had recently sold a bunch of figure arts on eBay, and you know, he started looking for, you know, other Star Wars. I mean, he's got a growing collection. He's been able to add a few figures from the Fontaine collection, and I still have visitation rights if I want to go see some of them. But now we were talking to him, and it's the struggle that I think a lot of listeners have seen me go through, because you've stayed true to your roots. You know, you collect a lot of vintage Star Wars stuff. You're not also I mean, it's just as Matt will give you a lot of grief for not also dipping your toe on the Hot Toys side. My collection went from being mostly Star Wars to a little Marvel, and it's flipped on its head now, and it's even to the point where even having a smaller focus on some figures, it's still like, well, that leaves the opening to, do I need to add the new versions of those figures going forward, or do I want to keep my Star Wars just to, you know, one or two shelves on a DTOF? You know, what does that mean for future releases? And you know, Mark told me, he's like, you know what? Just because you don't collect something from something doesn't mean you don't love it. He's like, you and Chris can talk Star Wars with the best of them. It's, you know, you don't have to also collect it to you know, to love something. And it was funny because I feel like just as much as you and I are able to give pep talks through this podcast to some of our listeners, and I think some of the things that have really resonated more with some people is, you know, using your collection as a form of currency and be willing to, you know, change things up and stuff. But, you know, to get advice back, it was like, you know what, Mark, you're absolutely right. And so I'm going to kind of take a look at things, and I usually have space issues of what I have, but I am going to fill out the favorite characters that I have. If they're going to give me more Captain America and Iron Man figures, I'm going to add them. And there's a few of the newer characters that I've latched onto. I do really like Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. And as I've talked about, I've got both versions of those on the way. I've got all the Spider-Man figures from the MCU, and I'll end up with I've got whenever Sideshow sends me the Black Panther from that was supposed to be out several months ago. I'll have both of those figures, and I don't know. I think I need to kind of see what is going to be the next thing if we're not going to get more Iron Man and Captain America. I have a feeling I will latch on to other characters, and it will allow me to have like the Infinity Saga era of my collection, and then kind of everything else.
Very well said. Yeah, Mark, that those sentiments reign true with, you don't have to have a collection to have a love of something. It's funny because I'll just touch upon this briefly, like going to Celebration, you realize that because I'm so ingrained in the collector community, the vintage Star Wars collecting community, that was kind of like my main focus there. But you realize that there's so many other areas of fandom and, whatever it may be. And a lot of them aren't involving collecting. And it's nice to see that. And like, I try to, I try to stick to what I decided to focus on, because as I've said in the past, you can't collect everything. And I came to a realization a few years ago that I need to do quality over quantity, and just get the things that you really love, not just buy things to buy things. So yeah, no, it's great advice. And again, going forward, MCU characters, there's going to be lots of options for us, and nobody has to worry about figures. The one thing we do have to worry about is actually getting the figures in hand. So, all right, man, I think that was a good little discussion.
Yeah, and this definitely will be not the last time we talk about this. This is going to be an ongoing conversation, and we're here. We're not going away anytime soon. So let's jump into this figure. We thought we were going to have a little bit of a shorter episode, but I think you and I got pretty passionately talking about the MCU here, and lo and behold, we'll probably have a normal length podcast here. But let's get to that feature figure review that I've got in hand, the Iron Man Mark 46 concept art figure from Marvel Studios, the first 10 years. It was a Sideshow exclusive. MMS 489 D25, retailing for $377. This was a pre-order that was announced on October 18th, 2018, and started shipping in the United States on January 11th, 2019. So it's been out for about 3 months or so. It was available much quicker in Hong Kong from release of the pre-order to actually being available. And, I think a lot of people took advantage of that. This was not a day one pre-order for me. I got it on November 9th. So roughly about a month later, I kind of decided, hey, I really like Iron Man. I want to have all the figures. I want all the Iron Men. And so, yeah, I just have to say, I mean, basically the elephant in the room, Chris, about this figure is it's just a repaint. It doesn't have a lot of accessories with it. There's no head sculpt. Is the price justifiable? And I honestly think that it is. And for me, I was able to add it to what I now dub as the holy trinity of my collection, to have the Mark 46 from Captain America Civil War, the Mark 47 from Spider-Man Homecoming, and it's actually the second time I've owned it because I made a really boneheaded decision last summer. And now to add this, and it's funny because it's the same figure, but they all look incredibly different just because of the paint job on them. And it's not like it's just a reissue or a repaint of a figure that wasn't any good. Like the Mark 46 is right up there with being one of the best Iron Man figures that Hot Toys has done, especially when you consider all the engineering and everything in it.
It does look like an amazing figure.
It's amazing.
We'll have to get Roy on a new t-shirt design for that. So for me, I have the cap, the concept cap, and this figure I do have. It's on my wish list on Sideshow, and I keep going back and forth whether or not it's one that I'm gonna get. And I don't know. We'll see. But I love the aesthetic of this figure. I was kind of sticking to like only MCU releases for figures to try to, rein in the pre-orders and stuff. So, do you have him? You have him set up with concept cap, or how do you have it all set up?
So I've got him with those other, I've got the three Iron
Okay.
Men on one shelf, and it looks incredible. So yeah, I don't think you need to tie him in. I know in the promo images and stuff, they tied him in with a concept art cap, the stealth suit that he had, the all black. But it's funny because I look at the promo images and then I look at it in hand, and it's not, the gold isn't as shiny as it is, but it's really like it took the Mark 46 and it says, okay, well, let's give him the classic Iron Man comics paint job, basically, and even each area of the suit that's kind of painted with that. And I'd be remiss if I failed to mention Ryan Meinderding, who is one of the main artists for Marvel Studios, and I am a huge fan. I know I've talked about it before. I love collecting the art of books. I've got the art of the Road to Avengers Endgame coming in. I think I'll actually get it from Amazon tomorrow. And I just love collecting those. I love looking through them and seeing what the figure started out as is the concept art, and then eventually what we get as the final, production in the films and stuff. And I love just seeing how they eventually land on what they do. And they literally hit like a home run like every single time. There's been very few times either the character's appearance or their costume or anything has really let any fans down. So the fact that Hot Toys, I mean, yes, you can say this was a cash grab. They used that concept art to give another version, either a kit bash or a repaint of a figure that they've already done. But I would argue that if you missed out on the Mark 46 and if you missed out on the Mark 47, it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And obviously the paint job is not exactly the same, but you're getting the same figure minus the head sculpt and all the same battery light up functions. And yes, to your point, Chris, it's not in the film, but that's the one, those are the two figures, both that Iron Man and the Cap are the two that I have that aren't technically in a film that I've got in my collection. And I have really no qualms about it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I mean, like I said, I have that cap, and it's like, because I didn't have a Captain America before, that was like kind of my way to get one. And it's a pretty versatile looking figure. And yeah, so this Iron Man, and from what I've heard on the groups and that sort of thing, I mean, a lot of people really, really enjoy this figure. Where would you say it ranks, compared to some of the other Iron Man figures that you have?
I mean, I personally love, and I mean, we've talked about this too. I mean, I think you have some of like the three best from the Iron Man 2 collection with the 4, 5, and 6. I mean, obviously, I don't have the 50 yet because who knows when we're going to get that. And we've got the 85 on the way and the 7's on the way. And I've got the 43 reissue on the way. It's tied for my favorite figure. I mean, I love it's got the top spot on my Iron Man Detoff, and I've got both of them. They're all just in very kind of museum like poses, but even in that, it's visually striking. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely prefer them. Roy's kind of got me eventually going to get into the, more the photography bug and being able to take better pictures of my figures. And he had a great article on our website, Sixth Scale Scavengers, about using proper lighting and all that other stuff. And I can't wait to try it. But unfortunately, Amazon has lost my order to have some LED light panels. So who knows if I'm actually ever going to get those. They were supposed to be here last Friday, but I'm not bitter. And yeah, I mean, it's up there. And I think as a stand, like if you don't intend to get like multiple Iron Mans, I think you can maybe skip it. But if you really like his appearance in Civil War and you don't want to pay the going rate for what those figures are going, I mean, let alone right now, I mean, if you wanted to get both of those figures out of the blue, out of your collection, I mean, you're easily looking at like 1,600, and that's
Yikes.
crazy. So if you can get a figure that's retailing for less than 400 and still available on Sideshow, that's a good compromise between the two of them. You know, it's a decent option. Now, for those accessories, you know, it's got that red and gold look. It's got a lot of the LED light ups. It does not have a head sculpt, which for me is not a deal breaker because I don't have any of my Iron Man figures displayed with the head sculpt. I actually sold some of them a couple episodes ago. It's got the different hands. It's got a couple, it still has the deployable air flaps on the back. It's got a couple forearm accessories for a missile. It's got shoulder stuff. So there is a few things. It doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that some of them do. But, if you're going to have a very kind of vanilla pose like that I do, you're not even going to worry about that whatsoever.
Yeah, it is a great looking figure. I'm looking at the pictures on Hot Toys website here. It's very tempting.
Well, the funny thing is like I feel like, and this isn't bad mouthing the official promo images and stuff, but a lot of them when he's fighting, I'm just kind of scrolling through here too, where I mean, some of them are kind of cool when he's fighting against the Cap, but then other ones where he's coming up behind him and stuff, those just look weird. Like some of the poses they have, I mean, it looks kind of cool, like where he's firing his hand arc reactors and stuff. And even the ones that have him standing, it's kind of like him either walking or it feels like he's striking a pose. Like when you have him just in like what he would be in his Hall of Armor, it looks... It's funny, but it actually looks better than some of the images that they have. So, and I think it's just some of the angles and the lighting and stuff. But I am obviously, as people can tell, I'm definitely glad that I added it to the collection. I think it makes for a good, if you have the opportunity to have all three, it's a cool little image. As I talked about with Roy, if I get the chance to get something set up, I think having the ability to display all three of them in a really cool photo would be very cool. And I would just say overall, I've been pretty pleased with it. When it comes to Chris, a 5-scale rating system here, I should have prepared in advance because I don't have anything. Maybe you can save me here, buddy.
Well, the obvious choice would be arc reactors.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But
I was going to say concept art books.
Yes, I love it. Good job, buddy. All right, so we're going to go with how many number of Marvel art of concept art books. And I think this it's not quite a 5, but I think it's probably 4.5 Marvel concept art books. And I think just the lack of accessories would be enough to kind of knock it down a little bit. The head sculpt thing doesn't bother me at all. And I just, overall, it's just a really solid figure. I think a lot of people are sleeping on right now. And, I hope people that are thinking of adding it will go ahead and do it. I would probably just being a good friend here and being your good conscience. Like, I don't feel like you need to add this one to yours. But I think if you got more of an Iron Man focus and you maybe skipped on this because you think it's not in a film, it kind of is. And it was in the artwork book. So it's not like it's something that's not, I hate to use like the Star Wars term of not canon or not, but this was almost the figure that we got in the film.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me, the reason why, like, I'm really looking, I've been on the fence with this one is because I love that Mark 47, but I don't want to pay the price. So that figure, I was on waitlist last year for the longest time and it never went through. And I missed the opportunity to buy it when it was on Big Bad Toy Store. So it's always been that one suit that was kind of bumming that I missed. But yeah, I'm gonna do some thinking here and
or you could just come over to my house and look at my collection.
True, that is very true. It's a lot cheaper as well. So, but anyway, no, great stuff. I love hearing about this figure and Iron Man figures. I know a lot of people can't stand there always being more Iron Man figures, but he is just such a cool looking character, and it's easy for me to see why Hot Toys invest in so many different variations.
I mean, Hot Toys does two things really well. They do human faces and painting and eyes and everything really well, and they engineer good Iron Man figures. There, when you pick up a diecast figure, there is some heft to it. It's solidly made. It's not chintzy whatsoever, and you get what you pay for. And I think that's why it was something that I was willing to kind of make a focus part of my collection, not just because I love the figure, but knowing that you're getting a quality collectible as well makes it really easy.
Awesome, man. Good review. So,
all right, let's get to some plug time here, Chris, because we're running long. And I know eventually here, if we keep talking, we might get right to Thursday and have to go watch Endgame in the theaters. But so we've got our website, sixthscalescavengers.com. We're kind of recently going through and doing a revamp of the look. It's still a work in progress. Roy and I are underneath the hood trying to make things look a little bit better. So stay tuned for more there. Steve's done an awesome job with the YouTube channel, and Roy as well with making it look it looks professional. I mean, it looks way better than what we had there, and it was pretty much non-existent. So thanks to those two guys for getting us up and running, and the Assemble and Rogue One 6 being there is just fantastic. It's so great to have a good team around us. We've got our TeePublic store, and you can search for Sixth Scale Scavengers there. And Roy, as we've mentioned on some of the other shows, just recently went through and redid a lot of the logos. There's some cool ones out there, like the Day One pre-order. They're action figures, not dolls. I mean, there's some really cool ones out there that if you're a fan of the podcast, check it out. If you add one of those, the team gets a couple dollars that we can put towards our hosting fees. And Chris, just in the month of April, we're going to be able to keep the lights on in May and June already. And the support that's been there is, needless to say, it's very humbling. And we're very thankful of everybody that's been able to contribute. And we also hope that you end up with some pretty cool swag out of it.
It feels really good to get the support in that aspect. And thanks to the team for coming up with new logos and stuff. And I've got a couple alternate logos for the Vintage Viewport shirt. And I know we've gotten a number of orders for that as well. So thanks as usual, guys. And hopefully we can just come up with some more cool designs for you guys in the future.
Yeah, if you got an idea, I mean, like Chris wants his It's Amazing shirt out there. We're all ears, and definitely look forward to more there. So like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram. We have our private group, the Sixth Scale Scavenger Collectors. Answer the questions, join the community there. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, and directly on sixthscalescavengers.libsyn.com if you want to grab that RSS feed and throw it into your podcast catcher of choice. A couple quick shout outs. PJ, the Paradox Nerd. Chris, you had the opportunity to meet PJ in person. I'm jealous. PJ's got all his video reviews for Hot Toys on his YouTube channel. We've got our good friends, the Collecting Weekly podcast, Zach, Dean, Jesse, and Manny. And then finally, John Martino's great group, Tashi Station 162 Full Scale Collectors.
Oh, man, that went longer than we planned, huh?
Yeah, so much for talking under an hour.
Right. Oh, well, we love this stuff, so we love talking about it. And we're just really excited for this little movie, this little independent movie that's coming out this week. And we'd love to share that excitement with you guys and look forward to everybody's reactions going forward. And then hopefully in a couple weeks, we can maybe delve in to a little bit more of the details.
I think it's almost a guarantee, Chris, we're going to have a heck of a lot more figures to talk about next time out. So until that time, why don't you bring us home, buddy?
Excelsior.